Hey YouTube, Awesome Rider here. Welcome to my review for Gozyuger episode 7. So this was a very interesting episode. I did like this episode, but I felt the pacing of it was uneven. We came off of a really good cliffhanger with the arrival of Daijujin, and we go into another good cliffhanger at the end of this episode. But the middle of it was very strange, and this episode also felt like it was 2 episodes smashed into one, because you do have this new Tyranno Ranger character arriving, teaching the characters how to be more of a team, be more of a Sentai, but then you have this side story with Sumino and Riku. Is it Riku? I'm going to call him Riku for this review. I've heard it both ways. I keep wanting to call him Ryuki so bad, but anyway, they have their own storyline, which is kind of your, it sounds funny to say, classic Gozyuger episode, because we're only 7 episodes in. But you know, we've kind of had the status quo of this little weird game thing, and it was weird. It was like this romance game because the main villain, who had a killer design by the way, it felt also kind of like that one guy, I don't remember his name, but he was in the early episodes, but they both feel like general designs rather than Monster of the Week designs. They have like a dating competition thing where it's Ryuki, see what I mean? Riku and the villain vying for Sumino's affections because she's working a case, I guess. Fiancés or girlfriends that have been dazzled by this guy or something, and it leads into that. And it's fine enough. It's weird. It's kind of your typical Gozyuger weirdness. It's definitely not as weird as last week's Playhouse thing, like I said, which just weirded me out. But it felt like this should have been its own episode because I think the most valuable thing from it, valuable with a lowercase v, was you get a little bit more insight into Blue's character when he talks about how he used to find all this joy in being an idol, but then somebody basically tried to cancel him or something and like spread rumors about him, so he's been knocked down, but he's determined to become #1 idol again. And that was a little insight into his character, but it's not all that different than what I already knew about him, which I found disappointing because I feel like with Black and Green's focus episodes, last week's with Red's, I know a lot more about them where I'm more invested in them, whereas Blue and Yellow feel very surface still. I wish this whole little plot had just been its own episode and we actually dug more into Blue Ranger's character. It kind of reminded me of an episode in Boon Boonger where you had this arc about Boon 119 debuting, and then we had this storyline about I think it was Black and Orange doing an investigation, which I quite liked, and I thought that should have been its own episode. And it felt like that again, where there were these 2 ideas smashed together. And there's something else I want to talk about with this, but I wanted to address too the quirkiness of Gozyuger, where I'm going into this series with a much more open mind, as I've stated multiple times, which has been extremely beneficial because I really have been having a good time, more so than usual, with the kind of anniversary elements and just the more surface level stuff. And I've even been less annoyed by the weird stuff. But I will admit, it's definitely a choice to have all these epic setups and interesting storylines mashed together with this very peculiar and specific weirdness. And I can see why it's putting people off. And it is kind of a choice too because we went more comedic with Zenkaiger. Things do seem to be heading in a more interesting direction, but I'll be curious how the series turns out overall. But I'll admit it certainly makes for a mixed experience. Like, it's interesting because I do, at this moment, think Boon Boonger was a better show in terms of feeling more solid and consistent, but Gozyuger is definitely a more interesting show to talk about each week, because with Boon Boonger, unless you were hitting a significant episode or arc, a lot of the week-to-week was like, yeah, you know, it was a nice episode, I liked the thing Taya said, but in this one, you have interesting stuff to talk about almost every week. Anyway, the meat and potatoes of this episode was the arrival of Tyranno Ranger, which I feel really stupid. I'm the dumbest boy in school. I thought it might actually be Tyranno Ranger because of the unique circumstances of him showing up in Daijujin. When we first see him, you don't see the belt. Like, it's in the promo photos. I totally missed it because I was so wrapped up in him showing up and you don't see the belt, so I honestly thought it was just actual Tyranno Ranger somehow. And I thought that would have been an interesting development to add variety to how all this is showing up. But it is a Legend Sentai fake, and it's somebody that, to my knowledge, has never been in Toku. I actually looked up his actor, and I didn't see anything about him being in any other Sentais or Riders or Ultramans, because I know Danma Motaro, fake Danma Motaro's actor was, I guess, an Ultraman or something, and people were saying they're trying to get not just Sentai actors, but all kinds of veteran Tokusatsu actors. I did like this character. I like the actor. I like the concept of it. But admittedly, it is a little bit disappointing the more and more we just get randos instead of actually returning characters, since we started off with Taya, which I thought was a huge surprise. I've said before, I don't mind it being a mix, but I hope we get another sort of cameo, mainly because, not just for the sake of the cameo, but I'd be really interested to see another Sentai actor transform into a different Ranger and have a different personality and further that storyline. This was kind of an interesting character, though, because he seems to be a sort of Sentai fan in a way. I think he says, like, Sentai archaeologist or whatever, but he has knowledge about Sentai, and it makes me curious about Sentai's perception in this seemingly smashed-up, like, battle-type world, where Sentai doesn't really seem to be talked about. They don't seem overly shocked to hear about Sentai, but it doesn't seem like they know what they are either. But he's basically giving them a history lesson of, like, yeah, the Great Battle gave us the rings to get the Sentai powers, and all of them are Reds, except for you guys. You're the only, like, last standing Sentai that's a team of 5, and I'm going to teach you how to be a Sentai. And it's done through them making omelet rice, which is pretty much the reoccurring food in Sentai and Rider. But I felt that this episode should have been about all 5 of them learning. Admittedly, it was funny later when Kinjiro shows up and basically downloads Black and Blue on the lessons they learned, and it just works. That is kind of funny. But I thought this was a strong premise for an episode about how all 5 of them learning to work together and learning how to be a Sentai. And I actually did like this character in the sense that I thought he would have made a great reoccurring character to maybe further their journey as a team, but then they wind up killing him off at the end, which was really strange. But I did like the concept of this, and I thought that was the strongest part. But again, I thought this should have been 2 separate episodes. It did leave me really curious about the mythology of this world, for sure. And the final fight stuff I thought was really good. He did reward them by giving them the Dino rings that he had. So we finally got it, guys. Oh my god. We got the Dino team up, the Quadruple Dino team up, guys. Oh my god. So I just slipped into that by mistake. Anyway. But we did get that. We got all 4 Dino transformations, which was really cool. Honestly, Abba Red with the gold armor looks really good. It almost looks like he's somehow wearing the golden chest piece of Abba Ray Black. And then also green, Unkyoryu Red looked kind of cool. But that was fun. Don Momotaro transformation for Goju Wolf, which also answered a question. I'm like, I wonder how that's going to look because Momotaro already has armor. And like, oh, they just kind of take the armor off. So yeah, that looked cool too. Like, good solid final fight. Blue kind of resolves his conflict with the main monster of the week and wins that battle. And then the mecha battle was really short, but still really cool to see Daijujin and Tegazord fighting side by side, and they do this cool finisher where like he becomes the sword mode and then you get the cannon mode for Daijujin, which was really neat. And you can't deny, even though a lot of us are sick of seeing MMPR, that Daijujin is a top tier mecha design, just so good, and seeing it in modern HD looks just so great, and it was really cool to see. And I guess we learned that for whatever reason, Tyranno Ranger's ring had the power to restore Daijujin because they wanted to do this. There's no real depth to it, it's just like, hey, we thought this would be cool. I think Daijujin did speak at the beginning though, which was kind of neat because we know Daijujin is a sentient mecha. But then we have a huge cliffhanger with our reveal of the Ring Hunter character who takes out Tyranno Ranger, which has already been memed as like both people like making fun of Hasbro taking out Power Rangers, and then of course Sentai purists being awful as always, being like, yeah, Sentai taking out Power Rangers. That was such a great cliffhanger. I like that we had 2 great cliffhangers in a row. That was just so neat. I was disappointed because, like I said, I thought he would have made a great recurring character, even if it was just for a Don Momotaro-sized arc of like, not arc, but you know, he was around a few episodes to sort of teach them more. But I thought it made for a great little lead into this character, and it feels like more and more stuff is happening with the series. But yeah, this was a good episode, but a mixed episode. I think my biggest criticism is honestly, I think all 5 of them should have been in this storyline about becoming a team, and these should have been 2 separate things. I continue to be really intrigued by the overall story and how it's going to play out and enjoying the action, but I'll admit, you know, the silliness is getting a bit strange, and it is a bit of a weird choice. But what did you guys think of the episode? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell to get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.